Don't make a sound, the woman whispered, pulling me by the wrist into the hotel linen closet. Please, I need 2 minutes of your time. I yanked my arm back. I was 63 years old, dressed in the pale blue dress I had bought 3 weeks ago specifically for this morning. And I was not going to stand in a closet full of folded tablecloths on my son's wedding day. Who are you? I said, keeping my voice low because the hallway behind us was already filling with florists and caterers. My name is Donna. I work the front desk here. She was maybe 40, dark hair pulled tight, hands shaking slightly. I've been trying to find the right moment to talk to you since last night. I recognized her at check-in. The woman your son is marrying. I stared at her. I grew up in Clarksburg, West Virginia, she said, and so did she. Except she wasn't called Melissa there. She was called Renee Calloway. And she has a husband in Clarksburg and 2 little boys. The folded tablecloths behind her seemed to blur. She's still married, Donna said quietly. I don't think she ever got a divorce. I had waited my whole life, it felt like, for this morning. My husband passed 2 years ago in October, a Tuesday, raining, the kind of day that shouldn't be allowed to hold the worst memory of your life. He had been the one who taught my son to throw a baseball and how to shake a man's hand, and how to tell the difference between a woman who loved you and a woman who needed something from you. I used to think that last lesson had stuck. I used to believe it completely. The wedding was at a vineyard, 40 minutes outside of Richmond. My son had proposed to Melissa 11 months ago on a dock at sunset. The kind of proposal that ends up on Instagram, and she had cried the right kind of tears, and he had called me that night vibrating with happiness. I had met her 6 times before this morning, 6 dinners, 2 holidays, 1 long weekend at the beach. She was beautiful in the way that made you feel slightly off balance when she walked into a room. She always agreed with whatever the last person said. She laughed a half second after everyone else, like she was watching herself laugh rather than actually doing it. I had not said any of this to my son. My husband would have. That was the difference between us. He would have found the exact right words, the ones that planted a question without sounding like an accusation. He was gone, and I was standing in a linen closet, and the ceremony was in 4 hours. Do you have any proof? I asked Donna. She pulled her phone from her apron pocket. She had already pulled up a Facebook profile, a man named Curtis Calloway from Clarksburg, West Virginia. His profile photo showed him with 2 boys who looked maybe 5 and 3, the kind of photo you take at a pumpkin patch in October. His most recent post was from 8 months ago, a photo of a woman I recognized immediately, even in the grainy outdoor light. The caption said, "Still praying she comes home." The woman in that photo was standing in my son's suite right now, having her hair pinned up by a stylist who charged $250 an hour. I thanked Donna. I asked her to stay available. Then I walked out of that closet and straight to the elevator, and I pressed the button for the 4th floor, and I stood there with my hands folded in front of me, like I was waiting for a church service to begin, which I suppose in a way I was. My son did not answer his phone. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. I left a message that I immediately regretted because it said nothing useful, only, "Call me back as soon as you can. It's important. I love you." Every mother leaves that message at least once in her life, and it almost never sounds as calm as she intends. I called again. Voicemail again. I called his best friend, who had been my son's roommate all through college and who I had fed Thanksgiving dinner to 6 years in a row. He answered on the 2nd ring, laughing at something in the background. "Hey, Ruth. You look amazing, by the way. I saw you in the lobby. I need to speak to my son," I said. "Right now." A pause. Then, lowering his voice, "We kind of took his phone this morning. It's a tradition. Groomsmen hold the groom's phone until the reception so he stays present." "I'm sorry, I didn't think. Go get him," I said. "Tell him his mother needs him. Don't tell him anything else." Another pause. I could hear him walking, the sound of a door, male laughter getting louder then quieter as another door opened and closed, then silence. 2 minutes of silence that felt like standing at the edge of something I could not see the bottom of. "He's not in the suite," his friend said. "He went down to walk the ceremony space. He does that, you know how he is. He wanted to see it set up before anyone else arrived." I knew how he was. I had known how he was for 31 years. He was the boy who woke up at 5 in the morning on Christmas not to open presents but to see the living room before anyone else had touched it. He wanted to hold good moments alone first, before they became shared, before they became memories. His father used to stand in the doorway and watch him do it and never say a word. I took the stairs down to the ground floor. I walked out through the side exit and across the gravel path toward the vineyard ceremony space, which was a wide pergola strung with white lights at the far end of the property, surrounded by rows of grapevines going gold in the late October morning. He was standing at the altar end of the pergola, hands in his trouser pockets, looking at the 2 chairs where the officiant and musicians would sit. He had his father's shoulders. He had always had his father's shoulders, and every time I noticed it, I felt a specific kind of grief that had no name I had ever found. He turned when he heard the gravel under my heels, and his face opened into a smile. "Mom, you look beautiful." I stopped a few feet from him. I had rehearsed this walkover. I had rehearsed words. None of them came. "What's wrong?" he said immediately. That was also his father in him. The ability to read a face before the face had done anything. "I need to tell you something," I said. "And I need you to hear all of it before you respond. Can you do that for me?" He went very still. The vineyard around us made small sounds. A bird, the wind moving through the grapevines, somewhere distant a delivery truck backing up to the kitchen entrance. I told him everything Donna had told me. I told him about Curtis Calloway in Clarksburg. I told him about the 2 little boys in the pumpkin patch photo. I told him about the Facebook page that was still live, still public, 8 months, of a man waiting for a woman who had come to Virginia to marry someone else. My son did not speak for a long time after I finished. "You saw a Facebook page?" he said finally. "Yes." "Mom." He pressed 2 fingers to his forehead. "Anyone can post anything on Facebook. You don't know that those kids are hers. You don't know. The woman who told me grew up in the same town," I said. "She recognized her at check-in. She has known her since. A hotel desk clerk." He said it carefully, not unkindly, but carefully. "A stranger who recognized someone from 15 years ago, maybe. And you're telling me this 2 hours before my wedding." I had known this moment would come. I had known it in the elevator, in the stairwell, crossing the gravel. This was why I had not called him from the closet, had not texted him a screenshot. Because evidence delivered by a mother on a wedding morning looks nothing like evidence. It looks like fear. It looks like loss. It looks like a woman who buried her husband 2 years ago and never quite found her way back to trusting that life could hold good things without taking them away. "I know how this sounds," I said. "Mom, I know." I put my hand on his arm. "I know you think I'm scared. I know you think I would find a reason to doubt any woman you brought home right now, because I miss your father and I don't want to lose you too. I have thought about that every single day since you told me you were getting married. I have asked myself that question more times than you know." I paused. "And then I saw that photo." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he looked away, out over the vineyard rows. "I can't stop this on the word of a stranger," he said quietly. "You understand that? I can't walk back up to that hotel and tell Melissa the wedding is off because a woman at the front desk thinks she recognizes her." "I'm not asking you to stop it," I said. And I surprised myself by meaning it. "I'm asking you to give me 2 hours. Let me make some calls. Let me find something solid. If I find nothing, we walk down that aisle and I dance at your reception and I never bring this up again for the rest of my life. But if I find something, 2 hours," he repeated, 2 hours. He was quiet again. A long, painful quiet. The ceremony starts at noon, he said. I know. He nodded once. He didn't look at me again. He walked back up the gravel path toward the hotel. And I stood there, alone at the altar end of the pergola, in my pale blue dress, in the October morning. And I tried to remember how to breathe steadily. I called Donna first. She was on her break, sitting in her car in the staff parking lot, and she picked up before the second ring as though she had been waiting. Is there anything else you remember about her? I asked. Anything specific? A maiden name, a school, a neighborhood. Renee Calloway née Prater, Donna said without hesitating. We went to the same high school. She was 2 years ahead of me. She married Curtis right out of high school. They had the boys young. She left. Nobody really knew where she went. Her mom still lives on Birch Street. Do you have a number for her mother? A pause. I might be able to find one. While I waited, I searched. I searched the name Renee Calloway in every combination I could construct. I found a voter registration record in Harrison County, West Virginia. Renee Calloway, registered address on Maple Drive, Clarksburg. Registered as recently as 3 years ago. I found a property tax record under Curtis and Renee Calloway. Joint ownership of a house. Not dissolved. Not transferred. Still joint. Donna called back with a number for a woman named Pat Prater. I sat down on a low stone wall at the edge of the parking lot and I dialed it. The woman who answered had a voice like gravel and kindness mixed together. The voice of someone who had spent a long time trying to be cheerful about difficult things. I told her who I was. I told her what I was trying to understand. She was quiet for 3 full seconds. Then she said, Lord, have mercy. Is your daughter still married to Curtis Calloway? I asked. Far as I know, Pat Prater said. She left those boys with him on 2 years ago, packed a bag and drove away. Curtis has been raising them by himself. He filed for divorce, but she never responded to the papers. Far as the court's concerned, they're still married. A pause. What has she done now, honey? I told her. All of it. The vineyard, the white lights, the $250 stylist, the ceremony in 90 minutes. The sound Pat Prater made was not quite a word. Her boys are 5 and 7 now, she said softly. Curtis brings them to my house every Sunday. Another pause. I'll call him. You give me your number and I'll have him call you right back. Curtis Calloway called me 11 minutes later. He was in his truck, he said, because his mother had called him and he had needed to get outside. His voice was very flat in the way that voices get when a person has been managing shock for a long time and no longer has the full reaction available to them. He told me everything I needed to know in under 5 minutes. They had never officially divorced. He had the original marriage certificate. He had tried for months to reach her. He had a lawyer, but the lawyer had told him she had to be served and she had made herself impossible to find. She changed her name, he said. She started going by her middle name. Melissa. It's her middle name, Renee Melissa. A pause. I can't believe she's getting married. I genuinely cannot. He stopped. I can be there in 4 hours. The ceremony is in 80 minutes, I said. Silence. I have the marriage certificate on my phone, he said. I photograph everything. My lawyer told me to keep records of everything. A pause. I can send it to you right now. 3 minutes later, I was looking at a photograph of a marriage certificate issued by Harrison County, West Virginia, bearing the names Curtis James Calloway and Renee Melissa Prater, signed and notarized, dated 16 years ago. I sat with it for a moment, just one moment. Then I sent it to my son. His response came back in 40 seconds. Come to the bridal suite hallway, now. I found him outside the door at the end of the 4th floor corridor, standing with his arms crossed, phone in his hand, face the color of old ash. He had looked at the certificate. He had looked at it for however long it took to walk from wherever he had been to this hallway, and whatever he had felt in that time had settled into something very quiet and very still. She doesn't know, you know, I said. No. What do you want to do? He looked at the door. Behind it, I knew there were bridesmaids and champagne and a woman applying the last touches to her hair before walking down an aisle to commit a federal crime in front of 112 guests. "I want to do this right," he said. "I don't want to." He stopped. He ran one hand over his jaw. "I don't want to go in there and scream. I don't want to make a scene in her room. I don't want to give her the chance to." Another stop. "She'll talk her way out of it. If I confront her alone, she will find a way to make me question everything. She's good at that." He was right. I knew he was right because I had watched her do it at the beach weekend. She had shifted the entire mood of a dinner table in under 10 minutes when the conversation had turned to something she found threatening. She was gifted at it, rerouting, reframing, finding the version of events that made her the reasonable one. "Then we wait," I said, "and we let it happen in front of everyone." He looked at me. "The officiant will ask," I said quietly, "if anyone knows of a reason." The words hung there between us. "That is the cruelest thing I have ever heard," he said. "I know. She'll be humiliated." "Yes, in front of her bridesmaids and my grandmother and everyone I've ever." "I know." I reached up and put my hand on his face the way I had when he was small and frightened of thunderstorms, both palms along his jaw, holding him still. "I know, sweetheart, and I am sorry that this is the situation we are in. I am sorry that the woman you love gave us no better option." I paused. "But there are 2 boys in Clarksburg, West Virginia who are 7 and 5 years old and have not seen their mother in 2 years. And there is a man there who has been raising them alone. And if we let this wedding happen, those boys' father will still be legally married to her. And this will become a criminal matter the moment she signs that license." I held his face steady. "I am not doing this to hurt her. I am doing this because it is the only way to make sure it stops." He closed his eyes. "Stay in the ceremony space," he said, very low. "I'll handle telling the officiant to continue. I'll walk down the aisle. I'll stand at the altar." A pause. "And when she asks, you stand up?" I nodded. I said, "I love you." He said nothing. He turned and walked back toward the elevator. The ceremony was everything it was supposed to be from a distance. The vineyard rose on either side of the pergola, caught the noon light, and turned gold. The 112 guests sat in white chairs, with sprigs of eucalyptus tied to the ends. The string quartet played something I recognized but couldn't name. The bridesmaids walked first, in dusty rows, and then the groomsmen, and then my son appeared at the head of the aisle, looking like every good thing his father had put into him, walking toward an inevitable moment in pale October sunlight. I sat in the front row on the groom's side with my hands folded in my lap, and I did not shake. I had spent 31 years being the person who did not shake when it mattered. She appeared at the end of the aisle on the arm of a man I understood was her uncle. Her dress was ivory lace, cathedral train, veil pinned with what I later learned were her grandmother's pearl clips. She was luminous in the way that beautiful women, who have planned extensively, can be luminous. She looked at my son the whole way down. She looked only at him. I watched her face. I watched it all the way. The officiant was a kind-faced man in his 50s who had been recommended by the venue and who had the practiced warmth of someone who had done this many hundreds of times. He spoke about love as a choice. He spoke about love as a choice. He spoke about commitment as an act of courage. He read a passage that someone had selected. I didn't hear which one. Then he reached the part I had been waiting for. "If anyone present knows of any reason why these 2 should not be joined in marriage, speak now, or forever hold your peace." He paused for the appropriate 2 seconds. The formality pause. The pause that no one ever fills. I stood up. The sound that went through that pergola was not quite a gasp. It was more like an intake, the whole room breathing at the same time. My son stood at the altar with his hands at his sides and his eyes forward. He did not look at me. She looked at me. Her face went through 3 things very fast. Surprise, then something I can only describe as calculation. Then a wide and practiced composure. She turned her head toward me with a measured grace that told me she had already decided how to play this. "I know of a reason," I said. My voice came out clear. 63 years of standing in front of rooms full of people. As a nurse, as a patient advocate, as a woman who had buried her husband and kept standing, had given me that much. My name is Ruth. I'm the groom's mother. And the woman standing at this altar is already married. Her name is Renee Melissa Calloway. She has been legally married to a man named Curtis Calloway in Clarksburg, West Virginia, for 16 years. The marriage has never been dissolved. I held up my phone. I have the marriage certificate. The silence was enormous. Melissa, Renee, turned back to face the front. Her jaw was set. I watched her grip the small bouquet of white ranunculus she was holding until her knuckles went pale. "This is," she started. "I have spoken to her husband directly," I said. "I have spoken to her mother. Her children are 5 and 7 years old." The silence broke then. It broke in every direction at once. Whispers, a woman crying somewhere in the middle rows, someone's chair scraping against the wooden platform floor. She turned to my son. Whatever she had planned to say, whatever version of this she had prepared, and I believe she had prepared one. I believe she had known this was always a possibility and had something ready. Whatever it was, she looked at his face and stopped, because his face had nothing in it she could use. He was not angry. He was not devastated in the open, readable way she could have navigated. He was simply looking at her with a steady, quiet grief that had no handle on it, no way in, nothing to reframe or redirect. He was looking at her the way you look at something that has already happened. She turned to the officiant. "This is a lie," she said. "Measured, controlled. This woman has never approved of me. She has been looking for a reason, ma'am." The officiant's voice was gentle but final. "I cannot continue the ceremony until this is verified." "I have the certificate right here," I said. "Anyone who wants to see it." 2 of the groomsmen had already moved. I didn't fully understand what was happening on the edges of the pergola until I heard the door at the back and turned to see a uniformed deputy sheriff walk in, followed by a man in plain clothes who walked straight down the center aisle with the particular focus of someone who had already made a decision about where they were going. I later learned that Donna, methodical, shaking-handed, 2 minutes of your time, Donna, had called the non-emergency police line at 9 that morning. She had been the first one to do the right thing. I had only been the second. The man in plain clothes said something to the officiant. The officiant stepped aside. "Melissa." I could not make myself call her Renee yet. She had been Melissa to me for 11 months. Looked at the man in plain clothes, and then she looked at the uniform behind him, and the composure cracked. Not all at once. It went the way ice goes when the temperature changes. Invisible at first, and then suddenly all the way. "No," she said. Just that. No, no, no. They were patient with her. I will say that for them. They were quiet and patient, and the deputy took her bouquet from her the way you take something from a person's hands when they don't realize they're still holding it. And the ivory lace cathedral train made a sound against the platform floor as she turned, and the October light came through the pergola slats and fell across the white chairs and the eucalyptus and my son's face. He had not moved from the altar. He stood there until she was out of the pergola, and then he sat down, right there at the front, in one of the officiant's chairs, and he put his elbows on his knees and his face in his hands. I went to him. I sat beside him. I put my hand on his back. The guests were filing out around us quietly, carefully, the way people leave a church when something solemn has happened. His grandmother squeezed his shoulder as she passed and didn't say anything, which was exactly right. We sat there for a long time. She really was going to marry me, he said finally, from behind his hands. Yes, I said. She looked at me the whole way down the aisle. I know, that wasn't nothing. Whatever else it was. He raised his head. His eyes were red but dry. That wasn't nothing. No, I agreed. I don't think it was. The vineyard was very quiet. The string quartet had packed up and left. Somewhere far back in the hotel building, I could hear the faint sounds of the kitchen staff beginning the complicated work of unmaking a reception that would not happen. "The boys," my son said. "Curtis is raising them. He's a good father by all accounts." He nodded slowly. "She left them." "Yes." He sat with that. I watched him sit with it, the way you watch someone pick up something heavy and figure out how to carry it. "I'm going to need some time," he said. "I know. I don't want to talk about it tonight. I don't want to talk about any of it for a while." "That's fine. But I need you to know." He stopped. He looked at the altar, at the white arch woven with greenery that was still standing there in the afternoon sun, purposeless now, patient. Dad would have figured this out in the first 5 minutes of meeting her. I made a sound that was not quite a laugh. "He would have," my son said. "He always knew. He did. I don't have that." He looked at his hands. "I don't have that thing he had." "No," I said. "But you have me." He looked at me then. Really looked. The way he had looked at me when he was small and I had told him something was going to be all right, looking for the part of my face that wasn't performing the comfort but actually believed it. I looked back at him steadily. "You have me," I said again, "and I am not going anywhere." The October light moved across the vineyard. The grapevine leaves, gold and rust and deep green at the edges, shivered once in a wind that came through and passed. My son reached over and put his hand over mine on the chair arm, the way his father used to do when we sat together and didn't need to say anything. We stayed like that until the light started to change. I have thought many times since that afternoon about what love actually requires of us. Not the kind in the vows, the cleaner, formal kind, the kind designed for the easy days. The other kind. The kind that makes you stand up in a room full of people and say the true thing, even when the true thing will hurt the person you are trying to protect. The kind that sits with someone in the wreckage of a day that was supposed to be the best of their life and does not try to make it mean something too soon. My husband would have said I did the right thing. I believe that. I have to believe it. But I also know that believing it doesn't make it easy to hold. I know that my son will carry this, the memory of that aisle, that light, that face turned toward him, for a long time. Maybe forever. I know that a mother's love is sometimes the most painful thing her child will ever receive, because it insists on seeing clearly when everything in us wants to close our eyes. If you are listening to this and you are a mother or a father or anyone who has ever loved someone well enough to tell them the truth at the worst possible moment, I want you to know this. It does not stop being hard. It does not stop costing something. But the alternative is watching someone you love walk into a life built on a lie and smile and wish them happiness and know what you know. I could not do that. I will not apologize for it. And if you have felt this, if you have stood in some version of that room, in your own pale blue dress, with the truth in your hand and the clock running, then you already know exactly what I mean. Thank you for listening.